Welcome to Life's Beautiful Synergies. I'm Dr. Rachel Behling. In today's episode, we're pausing for a mid-year goal check-in. Not to judge progress, but to realign with what actually matters now. We'll explore how values can shift as the year unfolds, how to tell when a goal really needs refinement versus recommitment, and why changing direction mid-year isn't failure. It's often a sign of clarity and growth. We'll also talk about what happens when motivation fades, why even disciplined people hit a dip, and how high performers redesign goals to feel lighter while still moving forward. This conversation is all about finishing the year strong without burning out, with clarity, flexibility, and purpose. Let's begin. So a question along the lines of mid-year goals is how do values shift as you get to mid-year? And how do you know that they're shifting and do that mid-year checklist? So one thing that I would strongly suggest is towards about this time of the year, sometimes we even forget what those goals were. So rule number one is to make sure that the goals that you set at the beginning of the year are very visible. You have them in a place where you can always see them, you can check in with them, you have both handwritten, visual, in your calendars. And then the second piece is, when do you step out of your busy, hectic life to check those goals in a place, in an environment that you have peace of mind, you have clarity, you have a little bit of time to actually sit back and review them, because that's the mindset that you need in order to do that mid-year assessment to see if the goals that you set are still aligned with the values that you're holding strong for this year and beyond. So first, make sure that you know what their goals are. And I know that sounds silly. You're like, of course I know what my mid-year goals are. Sometimes we set goals at the beginning of the year when we're super gung-ho, and we may not always keep them super present where we can see them and check in with them. And then the second piece is to set that mindset, that place or that time. Maybe it's in your backyard, maybe it's at a park, where you can truly have that white space around you to do that assessment. And then that's where you get to the work. That's where you can kind of sit down and really check to see if the goals that you set are aligned with where you wanted to be at the same time this year, and if they're still relevant. So those are some things that you want to definitely keep in mind, and now is the time of the year to start doing that assessment. So the follow-up question to that is it a sign of maturity to adjust your goals at mid-year, or is it really you giving up on something that you should actually be grittier and stick with them? Only you can answer that question, but there are a couple things that you can do to assess that. So first and foremost is where you are this year, at this place this year. Is it where you had expected to be? And do you feel that hell yeah? Like this is still a goal that aligns with where you wanted to be, what you wanted to accomplish, and what is still valuable to you this year. And do you still anticipate that when you're in December of this year, that you'll be able to reflect back to mid-year and say, yes, I'm so glad that I didn't give up on that goal. I'm so glad that maybe it was a financial goal that you wanted to have a certain amount of money in your savings, or you wanted to have a certain amount of your debt paid off, or you wanted to be in a different place with your physical activity or your mental health or relationships with particular people, whether they're family members, friends, or associates. So if the narrative to yourself at the end of the year is, yes, I am so glad that at mid-year I kept to those goals and those goals are still extremely valuable, now is the time of the year for you to be doing those assessments. But maybe you had maybe a little bit more superficial goals. And this is the time of the year that you really wanted to step back and go, do they still matter now as much as I thought they would when I created these goals in January? That's a sign of maturity. But the other part, to look forward to December and say, you know what, will I have wished that I had stuck with those goals? That's that sign of maturity that you really want to make sure that you're addressing at mid-year, because you can still course correct. You can still adjust those goals. You can adjust the measurements. You can adjust the timings. And honestly, what if you're ahead of track? What if you're ahead of where you thought you would be at this year with some of those bigger goals that I just mentioned? And now's the time to kind of step back and go, you know what? I really only thought that I would be running an hour straight at this point. But you know what? That's kind of an easy goal. I'm running a lot longer than I thought I would be, or I have a little bit more in my savings account than I thought, or I have a few more bills paid off than I thought it would be at this time when I set the goal. Then that's a sign of maturity as well, to be able to step back and go, you know what? I can actually accomplish more than I thought I would in January. But this is the time of the year to be stepping back and doing that assessment, because you still have time to course correct. So there's a couple signals that tell you when a goal needs refinement versus recommitment. So refinement kind of goes back to what I was saying before. And as you're looking at how you decided to measure that goal, and you see that you're either ahead or behind, that's a refinement. That's stepping back and saying, you know what, I'm not as far as I needed to be. So I'm going to adjust how I measure this goal or the definition of success, so that when I end the year, I still am keeping myself on track. As opposed to, should I continue with this goal? That's another point of discussion. This is where you need to step back and say, I set a goal in January and it's already in second quarter of this year and I haven't even started it yet. Or I have not shown any kind of commitment towards this goal. I thought I would be doing it 4 or 5 times a week or 5 or 6 times a month, and I'm really not consistent with it. Those are the goals that you really need to step back and say, is this still a goal that is a defining goal for me, that will help me to get to a place where I wanted to be by the end of this year? Those are the kind of goals where you really step back and go, you know what? I promised myself that I was going to run my first marathon, but I haven't even bought the shoes. I haven't even started a training regimen. I haven't scheduled any kind of weight training or flexibility training, or even started running. That's when you need to kind of step back and go, you know what, is running your first marathon, is that really something that's important? Because you haven't really done anything to achieve that goal, and it's already in the middle of second quarter. So those are some things that you really want to do a reality check with yourself to see if goals should be redefined or revamped or totally replaced with something else that has surfaced to actually drive better goal attainment for the year that you're finding valuable. So why does motivation dip even for highly motivated people when we get to mid-year? First and foremost is, when you first start a new goal, you might have that adrenaline hit, that, oh man, I set a goal that I was gonna, get up and exercise 4 days a week. In January, February, maybe even into March, you were really good at it, but then life got busy. The normal things that start happening after you get back from your end of year vacation and New Year's parties and all the things, real life starts settling in, and it starts just becoming another thing that you do. And maybe you're already a very, very busy person. So it really starts to become a struggle if the newness and the excitement of starting something new starts to wear off, but you're not quite to that place where you're seeing that return on investment. And even really, really high performing and really, really motivated people who you might think have a lot of grit, they will still struggle with this. This is us being humans. This is us in that space of liminality between who we were when we first made the goal, and we're not quite the person who's tackled this goal and accomplished it. So it's that weird space in the middle where you still have work to do. You haven't gotten there yet, but it's just not glamorous right now. And it's just that place where you have to be extra, extra gritty to stick with it until you start seeing the pounds come off, or the struggle at work becoming easier, or any of those things that you put as your New Year's resolutions. So, how can you redesign a goal so it starts feeling lighter, but without minimizing or taking away some of the momentum? First thing you can do is maybe make it a little more measurable. Maybe in January, when you made the goal, you thought you had really good measurements, but maybe the measurements that you have are too far apart. Maybe instead of waiting until you have a certain amount in your checking account, or until a whole bill is paid off, maybe you need to have smaller measurements that are easier to see on either a daily or a weekly or a twice a month perspective. So maybe you need to adjust the measurement or the frequency of the measurement in order for you to continue to stay on track. Another piece is maybe that outside accountability. Maybe you were counting on yourself to be the only one that keeps you motivated. Maybe you need to bring in an accountability partner, whether that's someone at work, someone in your personal life. Maybe you need to expand that scope of accountability to bring an accountability partner that will help to remind you, or to be your sounding board when when your motivation starts dipping a little bit. So those are two things that you can do to help you to reinvigorate when you start to lose some of that momentum about this time of the year. So kind of along those lines, so when you kind of think about how do high performers that this probably seems, maybe it seems like it's easy for them, how do they stay on track when they start getting into that phase of adoption or goal achievement? How do high performers, how do they get past this? Well, thing number one is remembering your why. Super, super important to remember the why. And I'll be the first one to admit that sometimes the why that I advertise or that I put out there for the world, it's not always the true why, because sometimes that why is so personal that sharing it outside of your own brain feels, maybe it feels too heavy. Maybe the why of something is so deeply personal that it's not appropriate to share outside of your own either small circle or even outside of yourself. But remembering that why is something that the most high performers can always bring themselves back to remember why they're doing something. And be okay with the fact that you may have two whys. You may have the why that is inside of your brain, inside of your own psyche, inside of your own, all the baggage that may have brought you to a place where that goal became so personal and so important. That's one why. And the other why is kind of the commercial one that you feel comfortable to say at a party, or to say with business folks, or with people at work that you don't have a really, really close relationship with. So remembering your why is one of the main things that high performers can always dig into and tap into when their motivation to stick with a goal starts to become a little bit heavier, and maybe detracting them from staying on track. So as we think about how do we how do we make sure that we finish the second half of this year strong? Some things that you can do is to simplify. One, sometimes when we set our goals in the beginning of the year, we're super complicated. Okay, first I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that, and I'm going to track it over here, and I'm going to measure it over here, and I'm going to tell people over here. And sometimes by the middle of the year, you've kind of settled into that goal. You kind of can see what kind of took you off track, what made you kind of miss a couple days, or to have you kind of step away from the momentum. But you've also figured out the things that are going to make it stickier or that help you to be grittier. Those are the things you want to stick with. So once again, maybe at the beginning of the year, you had a super complex way of holding yourself accountable, of measuring your goals, of making sure all the things happened. But now at mid-year, you probably have a really good idea of how to make that goal stick. So I'm going to encourage you to use this time of the year to take out some of the noise, take out some of the extra work, and think about what are the things that you need to do, the most simple execution of them, because the rest of the year is only going to get more complex. We're going to get into the middle of the year. That's going to be 4th of July before you know it. You're going to blink and it's going to be September, then it's going to be Halloween, then it's going to be Thanksgiving, then it's going to be Christmas. And you're going to be at the end of the year wondering where everything went, where the time went, and how come you just didn't have time to get those goals done. So I'm going to encourage you to use this time of the year to find the most simple, straightforward, easy way to accomplish the goals that are still important for you today at this mid-year point, and stick with those. So something that I want to ask yourself is, what are the smallest, most significant things that you can do this week to make sure that you have that momentum to take your goals to the finish line? Thing number one, is it on your calendar? Because if the goals that you're driving, that you are recommitting to, think about at a wedding anniversary where you're renewing your vows, think about this as vow renewal for your goals. But are they actually on your calendar? So if you have a goal to pay off, let's say, your student loan debt, or maybe you want to pay off your house, every payday, do you have an action on your calendar to send an extra house payment? Or have you automated it so that however much amount that is, maybe it's $1,000, automatically goes to your mortgage company? Is that on your calendar? So if it's not on your calendar, if it's not written down and it's waiting for you to take an action, it's going to be harder to do. That's something that you can do today, this week, in order to help the stickiness of your goals, is to make sure, one, that it's on your calendar, two, that it's automated, and then three, is the measurement of it automated somewhere? And is there any way that you can get an update on your phone, in your banking app, on your scale, whatever that might look like? That's something that you can do today before you leave work today, before you end your day and go to bed. Is it on your calendar? And is it automated so you don't have to think about it to execute a piece of that goal? Something you can do right now today. As we close today's conversation, remember that a mid-year check-in isn't about measuring how far behind or ahead you are. It's about noticing what's changed, what still matters, and what needs to be adjusted so you can keep going with intention. If this conversation resonated with you, I invite you to continue this journey with us. Follow Life's Beautiful Synergies wherever you listen to podcasts, and connect with me online for more conversations on intentional goal setting, resilience, focus, and a sustainable leadership. Thank you for being here, and until next time, remember, finishing the year strong means choosing wisely, recommitting thoughtfully, and moving forward in a way that supports the life you're building.